Hello, it's lovely to have you here tonight. We're all pleased that you could attend this evening's event, and it's great to have such a large audience. So welcome everyone to the Nature of Shakespeare Part 1. I'm Cheryl White, Coordinator of Visitor, Engagement, and Exhibitions at the Arnold Arboretum. It's my joy to be part of this special opportunity for the Arnold Arboretum and Actors Shakespeare Project to continue to bring you theater in our landscape, a virtual landscape tonight. Both of our organizations are here in Boston, but delighted that this virtual presentation allows us to welcome audience members from far away. Peter and Leslie Ciampi made this production possible, and I want to send them an enormous thank you. This is the first part of the Nature of Shakespeare. Part 2 is in 2 weeks at 7:30 p.m. on Saturday, October 17th. Each part is unique and a standalone film. We hope you will enjoy both. After I film, I really encourage you to stay for a question and answer talk back with two of our show's actors and our hosts. I would like to welcome both of our hosts, Ned Friedman, the director of the Arnold Arboretum and Arnold Professor of Biology at Harvard University, and Chris Edwards, Artistic Director of Actors Shakespeare Project. And now, here is Ned Friedman, the Arboretum's director.
Thank you, Cheryl. It's wonderful to be here this evening. My backdrop is the Dawn Redwood, one of the most important trees that sort of graces the grounds of the Arnold Arboretum. It was thought to be extinct in the wild all across the world, not seen for 2 million years when it was first discovered living very happily in Hubei province in China. And Arnold Arboretum worked with our colleagues in China to bring this wonderful plant out that graces the streets in the Arnold Arboretum of many places and gardens around the world. So quickly, I just want to mention a couple of things. The Arnold Arboretum of Harvard University has been one of the very few botanical gardens or arboreta in the world to remain open since the beginning of our coronavirus pandemic. It's been a heroic effort on the part of the horticultural team on the grounds and in the greenhouses to make sure that every aspect of the Arnold Arboretum's mission to make a safe, welcoming, and important place to connect with nature during stressful times has been available to everyone at no cost every day from sunrise to sunset. The people in public programs have had to literally change the model for which they have worked so hard. Instead of being on the grounds tonight with our actors and the Actors Shakespeare Project, we're doing this digitally. But every aspect of our public programs, from our children's education to our adult education to our partnerships in the arts, has been another heroic effort of our wonderful people in seizing the moment and making sure that we continue to carry on in our mission. So I don't want to belabor anything. I will just make a couple of notes. We've had almost 1 million visitors since the end of March. That tells you something about the importance of parks, open spaces, and places where nature can be a cure to many things that are stressful in our environment. And importantly, this is our 3rd year partnering with Actors Shakespeare Project. And I am so glad that rather than think about what we couldn't do, our partners at Actors Shakespeare Project thought about what they could do, and our team here with Cheryl White and so many others and Pam Thompson figured out a way in which they could bring to life the magnificent grounds of the Arnold Arboretum while making sure that we continue to support the importance of arts and theater in our lives. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Chris Edwards, who is the Artistic Director of Actors Shakespeare Project.
Thank you, Ned. Thank you so much. I'm Chris Edwards. I'm the Artistic Director here at Actors Shakespeare Project and the director of tonight's film/video. Before I start, I would like to recognize that Harvard University is situated on the traditional and ancestral territory of the Massachusetts people and strives to honor this relationship. Also, I'd like to thank the Arboretum staff and everyone working there who has helped to bring this project to life, and all of the ASP staff and the designers and particularly Austin DeBesh, our cinematographer, who really has been the heart and logistics and the get up and go behind this entire project. Thank you, Austin. We appreciate you so much. So this project grew out of, as Cheryl said and Ned referred to, several different factors, one of which is that we've had a 3-year relationship with the Arboretum. And when COVID hit, we were really looking for a way to continue that relationship because we really enjoy working in this amazing space. To be able to stand in the middle of the Arboretum and say, hey, this is our stage for today is an incredible feeling. So that was one of the reasons we created this project with Cheryl and the Arboretum. The second was basically the beauty of the environment and a simple want or need to hear Shakespeare's magnificent words in this incredible space. And as you all know, we are a site-specific company. And again, what better site to do Shakespeare in than the natural world? Lastly, I think from a personal place, I found, like many people, solace in coming to the Arboretum when COVID hit. So about six months ago, I started dropping into the Arboretum that was not work-related. And it really allowed me to metaphorically and literally take a deep breath as I was moving through my life and thinking, as many people are at this time, of what's important to them. I started thinking of ways to simplify. And so one of the things I thought was perhaps we could simplify and get back to the natural order of things. And this project came out of that. So we came up with the idea of the Nature of Shakespeare. So I also, like Ned, won't belabor anything. And without further ado, I shall pass it on to our production manager, Steve Vieira, who has also been incredible during this process, and to start the video. Steve, if you would.
Now, my co-mates, brothers and sisters in exile, had not old custom made this life more sweet than that of painted pomp? Are not these woods more free from peril than is the envious court? Here, we feel not the penalty of Adam, the season's difference as the icy fang and churlish chiding of the winter's wind, which when it bites and blows against my body, I smile and say, this is no flattery. These are counselors which feelingly persuade me what I am. Sweet are the uses of adversity. And this, our life, free from public haunt, finds tongues in trees, books in the running brooks, sermons in stones, and good in everything. I would not change it.
And this our life, exempt from public haunt, finds tongues in trees, books in the running brooks, sermons in stones, and good in everything. And the idea of finds tongues in trees is really about the notion of removing yourself from the trappings of civilization, all of the complexities of human interaction, and angst and conflict, and turning to nature and letting nature reveal itself to us, letting those trees actually, if we have the time, speak to us. As our visitors come, and the trees speak in tongues, and I think that deepens everyone's personal connection to the world of nature and to the universe. So it's a really profound thing that Shakespeare got that I think is part of the Arnold Arboretum's DNA. The Arnold Arboretum is a hybrid institution, and so it's actually a part of Harvard University. It's a museum of trees. These are like paintings on a wall in an art museum, except they're alive, and they are really important for conservation. They're really important for research. They're really important for the aesthetic we've just been talking about of connecting us to nature in the city. It's a special space. It's essentially a gallery, and for us, it means that we are showing off, hopefully, the best of the best, the most diverse, the deepest collection. And the maple collection at the Arnold Arboretum is the deepest collection of maples of any botanical garden or arboretum in the world. The collection, what it means to Boston is that anyone can come here. We're one of the few cultural institutions in Boston that's free, and you can have the finest collections of plants every day as often as you want, and you can let them, again, speak to you and surprise you, delight you, and in many ways just deepen you and your connectedness. It's been a wonderful thing to have Actors Shakespeare Project here in this performance, their set of performances, examining this wonderful interface between Shakespeare and nature. And there's this other line that's going to be part of what happens in these wonderful productions. One touch of nature makes the whole world kin. And it's really something, I think, quite special in that there's a duality to it. It's making reference to the idea that if we, as humans, can get beyond the superficial aspects of our differences, if we can see to commonality, that's about human nature. We can actually find something that allows us not necessarily to be in conflict, but to be connected. One touch of nature makes the whole world kin. I just tell everyone that it is an extraordinary privilege to be able to be part of the people who take care of this institution, the plants, its history, and the best part is we get to share it with the world.
Thou, nature, art my goddess. To thy law my services are bound. Wherefore should I stand in the plague of custom and permit the curiosity of nations to deprive me, for that I am some 12 or 14 moonshines lag of a brother? Why bastard? Wherefore base, when my dimensions are as well compact? My mind is generous, and my shape as true as honest madam's issue. Why brand they us with base? With baseness? Bastardy. Base. Base? Well then, legitimate Edgar. I must have your land. Our father's love is to the bastard Edmond as to the legitimate. Fine word, legitimate. I grow. I prosper. Now, gods. Stand up for bastards.
I heard myself proclaimed, and by the happy hollow of a tree, escaped the hunt. No port is free, no place that guard, and most unusual vigilance does not attend my taking. Whiles I may escape, I will preserve myself, and am bethought to take the basest and most poorest shape that ever penury in contempt of man brought near to beast. My face I'll grime with filth, and with presented nakedness outface the winds and persecutions of the sky. The country gives me proof and precedent of bedlam beggars, who with roaring voices strike in their numbed and mortified bare arms pins, wooden pricks, nails, sprigs of rosemary. Poor Turligard. Poor Tom. That's something yet. Edgar, I nothing am.
In my role as the keeper of the living collections or the curator, I basically think an awful lot about the major aspects of any museum collection. How are you adding and subtracting to it as per sort of your compass bearing? What's important to the mission of the institution? We practice conservation or preservation in this collection through expert horticulture, expert gardening, expert arboriculture. So what can we do to preserve these works of art? So, we have 8 nationally accredited collections, and hemlock is one of them. In part, it's because of the 1600 wild hemlocks that are on the hill, but also other species of hemlock from throughout North America, but also East Asia that are also planted along Hemlock Hill. And so it's really this interesting juxtaposition of the wild, what a forest primeval collection or assemblage of wild hemlocks would be, but also the cultivated. When I walk into Hemlock Hill, I can simultaneously kind of step back and reimagine what this piece of land might have looked like, 300 years ago, and kind of get lost in that, and then have my eyes just drop down a little bit and see a 10-year-old hemlock from central China. And you'll see both of those things simultaneously. And that's really kind of the magic of the space that is the Arnold Arboretum. We do both. We are open for everybody to come and enjoy, but we're also one of the most amazing research collections of trees on Earth. Well, when you think about nature and you think about people, humans, some people might think of us apart from nature, but really we're a part of nature. And I think that anytime somebody graces their hand across a flower or rests their back against a tall hemlock tree or something like that, it really connects us to kind of who we are, going back until eons and millennia. And I think that we need to be reminded of that. We no matter how hard we might try to be separated from nature, it really, we know that there's we can never run away from it.
Full many a glorious morning have I seen flatter the mountain tops with sovereign eye, kissing with golden face the meadows green, gilding pale streams with heavenly alchemy. Anon permit the basest clouds to ride with ugly wrack on his celestial face. and from the forlorn world his visage hide, stealing to west with his disgrace. Even so my sun when early morn did shine, with all triumphant splendor on my brow. But out, alack, he was but 1 hour mine. The region cloud hath masked him from me now. Yet him for this, my love no whit disdaineth. Sons of the world may stain, when heaven's sun staineth.
I know a bank where the wild thyme blows, where the oxlips and nodding violets grow, quite over-canopied with luscious woodbine, with sweet musk roses and with eglantine. Ill met by sunlight, proud Titania.
What? Jealous, Oberon? I have forsworn thy bed and company.
Tarry, rash wanton. Am not I thy lord?
Then I must be thy lady. Why art thou here? Come from the farthest steppe of India?
I know thy love to Theseus.
These are the forgeries of jealousy. And never since the middle summer spring met we, to dance our ringlets to the whistling winds. But with thy brawls thou hast disturbed our sport. Therefore the wind, piping to us in vain, as in revenge, have sucked up from the sea contagious fogs, which falling in the land hath every pelting river made so proud that they have overborne their continents. The green corn hath rotted ere his youth attained a beard. The fold stands empty in the drowned fields, and crows are fatted with the Murrian flock. The human mortals want their
winter here.
No night is now with him or carol blessed. Therefore the moon, the governess of floods, pale in her anger, washes all the air, that rheumatic diseases do abound. And thorough this distemperature, we see the seasons alter. Hoary-headed frost falls in the fresh lap of the crimson rose. And on old Hyam's thin and icy crown, an odorous chaplet of sweet summer buds is as in mockery set. The spring, the summer, the childing autumn, angry winter change their wonted liveries, and the mazed world by their increase now knows not which is which. And this same progeny of evils comes from our debate, from our dissension. We are their parents and original.
Do you amend it? It lies with you. Why should Titania cross her Oberon?
Fairies away. We shall chide downright if I longer stay.
Go thy way.
What's special about the ponds? Well, they are a wonderful little special area of biodiversity. It's a wonderful place to go and be able to see insects and aquatic life and the aquatic plants and the plants trees that don't mind getting their feet wet. So delightful with all the different little creatures. The turtles, we have a lot of turtles. We have a 28-pound snapping turtle in the ponds, real whoppers. But these little pockets of naturalness are they're so refreshing to me and such a restorative to me to go out and just explore and enjoy. So I think the bard was very wise in that. A touch of nature makes the whole world kin. For me, that means that people can come together, whether they be of different ages, religions, economic, educational, any sorts of things. They can come together in support of nature, perhaps to help solve problems in nature like climate change, for example, deforestation, different sorts of things, or come together in learning, in fellowship, and just to make the world a better place. It breaks down all barriers. And so I feel like a place like this it's imperative to have something like this in a city, because it just helps people, because nature bridges so many different divides. I feel like it's a great democratizer, and it is a place where everyone can resort to.
Hang there, my verse, in witness of my love. And thou, thrice crowned queen of night, survey with thy chaste eye from thy pale sphere above thy huntress name that my full life doth sway. Ooh, Rosalind. These trees shall be my books, and in their barks my thoughts I'll character, that every eye which in this forest looks shall see thy virtue witnessed everywhere. Run, run, Orlando, carve on every tree the fair, the true, and unexpressive she! Woohoo! Rosalind! Yeah!
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. That felt very short. We have episode 2 coming up, but after being on site at the Arboretum, shooting all of these scenes for a very long day, it's interesting to see it all come together. So shall we go around and do a couple intros, and Ned and Cheryl and Chris will have you introduce yourselves again, just for those who might have joined us after the first few moments. So let's start with you, Chris.
Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Edwards. I am the artistic director of Actors Shakespeare Project and the director of this film.
Ned?
I'm Ned Friedman, the director of the Arnold Arboretum, and I'm a professor at Harvard University.
Cheryl?
I'm White, coordinator of visitor engagement and exhibitions.
And our 2 actors?
Hey, I'm Doug Lockwood. In tonight's episode, I was Edgar and Titania. I'm part of Actors Shakespeare Project. Yeah.
Paige.
Hi, everybody. I'm Paige Clark. I'm a resident acting company member of Actors Shakespeare Project, and I performed Sonnet 33 today.
Thanks for being here. And I'm Mara Sidmore. I am the interim managing director and director of education, and also an actor in the acting company. And we'll have a brief Q&A. If you have questions for us, feel free to type them right into the Q&A, right into the Q&A button and or in the chat, and we'll pick up questions from anybody who has them. To start us off, I thought we could talk a little bit about casting. So Chris and Doug and Paige, would you like to talk a little bit about how you got to the roles that you did, or the sonnets that you read, and why and how that connected to the environment?
Well, I guess I should probably start.
Yes.
Thanks, Mara. Sometimes, as I said at the beginning, one of the things that I've been doing is just trying to find a simpler place, So we spent a day, well, more than a day, probably 10 days on and off over the last, what's it been, 3 months, Cheryl, me going back and forth to the Arboretum, getting a feel for the place. And so I just tried to trust my instincts and the folks that were in the company who just kind of seemed to speak to me through what I was thinking. So there was that aspect of it. I also wanted to note that generally speaking, as a cast, we are a predominantly BIPOC cast, and you'll see that as well in the next episode. And it's not too often that POCs get to be a part of this story, a story that's light, heartfelt, has some romance, and is in a space that's, I think, at times delightful and simple. We often are not invited to that party. So I wanted some of the folks in our company to be a part of that. And then, we have a wonderful group of professional actors in our resident acting company. It was hard to pick only 5 or 4 folks from the company as well, but all of our actors are amazing and wonderful people and really talented. So that's sort of what I went with, was just an instinct.
I'll jump in and say one conversation I had with Chris early on was because he started mentioning some of the material he was thinking about, and which included the Titania Oberon scene that you saw. And when I was a junior in my undergrad, my Shakespeare teacher had us all memorize that speech. So I have known that speech for many, many years, and I have been wanting to do it in some context. So I just asked him pretty much flat out if I could do it, and he was like, yeah, let's do it. So that was just a little selfish delight. And the Arboretum also happens to be about a 5-minute walk from where I live. So that was also a selfish delight to get to float over to the Arboretum from where I live and get to do these. And it was also neat. I did play Edgar in the ASP's first production of Lear, and so it was really, really amazing to get to revisit that and actually, be on that hill. And we had on the day that we rehearsed it, unexpectedly, a helicopter flew over just at the moment that we did end up piping that helicopter music into the final to the second day, but only because of the thing that just happened magically on that first rehearsal day. So yeah.
And I'll just say something quick. Hi. I'm a little worried about my connectivity issues just because my family's watching this right now in the other room. So that's fun. But the sonnet, I'd never seen it before, actually. I'd worked on some other sonnets before in school and, throughout my career and stuff, but I'd never read this one. And it was really lovely. And Chris really said flat out at the beginning, bring your full self to this. Anytime, that I'd ever been told, be more this way or do it more that way, or there's a right way to do Shakespeare or verse, let's throw that out the window and let's do something different. And so I really got to explore my impulses in a way that with the text verbally and stuff that I had never gotten to before, which was freeing and kind of exciting.
Thank you both. That's great. There's a couple questions in the chat about what it's like to perform at the Arboretum, and if acting verse of Shakespeare in nature gave you a different feeling about the experience. And you've spoken to that just a little bit in terms of the ambient sound, perhaps, that we wouldn't necessarily have on stage. And Paige, I have a visceral memory of you on that hill and how I couldn't actually hear you from far away, right? Because you had a microphone on. So if you could both just talk a little bit about what it was like for you, and then perhaps we can ask Cheryl and Ned to chime in around what it's like from your perspective, because you don't typically have live people speaking text in the Arboretum aside from natural conversation or other specifically programmed events. So Doug and Paige, first to you. What was it like as actors?
Well, I'll just say two really quick things. One, I mean, often on stage, of course, we have to use our imaginations a huge amount to imagine these landscapes and environments and worlds of the play that we're in. And I love using my imagination. And I wouldn't say that I didn't use my imagination when we filmed it, but I had to use it a lot less because there was just so much right there to work with. It was simply a matter of a lot of times of like looking around and getting that kind of tactile experience is also something we just don't get a lot when we're making a play in a theater in terms of the actual environment. And then it was also just, I think the biggest difference was being able to, and in a certain sense, having to really tone down vocally and just trust that the mics that we're wearing are going to pick up everything, and to be able to just speak at more conversational kind of tones was a really different way of working. Because even though, ASP is all about intimacy, we still have to, a certain sense of like filling the space. There's no need to fill the space with on-camera acting. So that was the most different in a sense for me. And
yeah. And I would echo what Doug said about imagination. I didn't have to pretend anything. The sun was right there, like streaming on my face, and it just felt so great. And I just realized that instead of imagination this time, it was the senses, right? It felt very like I could lean on my senses instead of my imagination. I could smell the air around me and like look at the beautiful flowers and all of that. And then let that inform the text instead of sort of, having a rich imaginary life. Also, yeah, definitely vocally was like so freeing in a way, because I'm always like, don't do so much, like more, less. So the scale of the volume and stuff was really different. It was really nice to be able to feel grounded in the ground. So that's another thing that I strive for that on stage, right? Standing my ground and being grounded and centered. And it was just that much easier and just more exciting grounding my feet into the ground or into a log or something. That was really fun.
Thank you both for that. Ned and Cheryl, so when you look at these pieces on video, or Cheryl, you were there in the moment, what is it like for you to have the Arboretum filled up with the text like this? Does it put the landscape into a different container for you, or what's your reaction?
Yes, and I'll just say a couple of things briefly and then turn it over to Ned, because I'm sure he's thought about, what this Arboretum means to everybody, and certainly what it means to have art in the Arboretum, this combination of art and science. I've worked with them this is the third year, almost, certainly the third production. And it just gets better every time. I've envisioned theater in our landscape, I guess, for years and years, and it's so nice to have it come to fruition. But I think one of the interesting things is watching the actors actually, be in these locations. And I think Chris and I mentioned this in an interview we did at the Globe, that the locations, the plants actually become characters, and they're all working together. Magical, I'm sure, has been said already, but that's what it becomes. It becomes a cast of characters that are both human and nature, and that for me has been very exciting. And I, want to turn it over to Ned also. I just want to mention one thing. I saw that there are some people interested in the actual trees that are here in the Arboretum, particularly the maples, which Ned talked about, and we had some shots, and so he might address that also, because you can get all kinds of information from the Arboretum on all the plants that we have. And we're going to have somebody put an email in the chat that will tell you to contact us, and we can get you all kinds of information about the plants themselves.
Yeah, thanks, Cheryl. It's an interesting thing. This is the third sort of what I would call co-production between Actors Shakespeare Project and the Arnold Arboretum. And I don't mean it as institutions. I actually mean it as people who act, and as a landscape designed by Frederick Law Olmsted with these magnificent trees from around the world that then come together in a unique set of interactions. And I was thinking back to the first time we worked together and we did Macbeth with the fog, and it was a very, very cold fall, autumn evening. And I wondered, we were over by the Honeywell building, who would come? And the answer was probably 1,300 people came. It was a good thing that it was that cold, because frankly, we wouldn't have been able to find any more space. And so one of the things that I took away from that first co-production of trees, landscape, actors, and theater was that it's a unique set of moments. It can never be created again. It's literally the moment in time for the plant. It's the people who are, as Paige and Doug were talking about, who are reacting. They're not imagining trees. They're actually surrounded by them, but they're inspired by. And this interaction is something that I would say can't happen on a stage. It doesn't mean it's better or worse. It's just unique. And then last year with Pride and Prejudice in the Leventrip, which is a much more formal garden, the use of the vine collection to create the scenes and the entries of all the actors, the choreography of it, to me was really significant. And I was just part of the filming over on Hemlock Hill for this evening's production. But what I think is exciting is that you've got this landscape, you've got these remarkable trees, 16,000 trees, 2,100 species from around the world. And we talk about, you mentioned that the Actors Shakespeare Project is a group of diverse people. And it's exactly the same with the Arnold Arboretum. We are the plants of the world. And that's a really important thing, because we work with the people and peoples of the world. We collect in China with Chinese colleagues. We go to Japan, we work with Japanese colleagues. We invite them here to collect in America, to bring America's beautiful plants. And so all of this has significance when I look at it. And I'll just say, it's magic. Olmsted and Sargent, the first director, were the oldest public arboretum in North America. They knew what they were doing. The space works almost 150 years after it was created and begun. So many other kinds of institutions like this don't exist anymore. It works, it has a modern context. There is nothing dated about it. That's the magic of a beautiful place like the Arnold.
Thank you, Ned. That was beautifully said. And I think the actors and the rest of the staff at Actors Shakespeare Project can speak to the specialness of being in that place too, in all of the places. We have a couple other questions to throw to you all. We're wondering about the connection, aside from the connection to nature, what were some of the threads that inspired the choice of this particular combination of textual pieces? And Chris, I know that we have part 2 coming up and there'll be some more pieces there, but can you speak to specifically these that we saw here tonight?
Yes, I think, wait, am I muted? No. I felt like all of these pieces either reference the idea of nature, the words that we, in a contemporary setting, consider nature. As Ned said at the beginning in his conversation, one of the quotes we use is, a touch of nature makes the whole world kin. Well, that doesn't just talk about the idea of plants, trees, flowers, or the natural world, but it's also about human nature, right? And how what fellowship means. And I just found that interesting, that on some level, Shakespeare's talking about nature as the idea of fellowship, and then you walk into the Arboretum, and you are in fellowship with trees and plants. And if you just sit there, and again, like Ned said, if you hear the wind moving through the leaves, the way the branches or the trees are creaking, what the smells are, it just creates a whole nother relationship. So I thought all of those pieces, to some extent, either referenced that or took place in a natural setting, more particularly plants and trees. I also felt like part of the reason for doing the piece and picking the particular scenes and monologues, Shakespeare often talks about nature, in my view, as a filter to the human spirit, right? That he uses nature to use the imagery or the metaphor of how the world is going, how life is going, how a relationship is going, how romance is going. If something is off, he uses an imagery to that. And I thought that was also something that was in the pieces. More particularly, if we look at them individually, the first one I thought is pretty straightforward. Is a guy in the middle of the woods who's been exiled to the woods saying, "Hey, man, the woods are not so bad. Actually, this is better than the court." And I've got the mask on, and it's also, analogous to where we are around COVID. And then the next piece, we've got a man coming onto the bridge talking about he's committed to nature and the natural order of things, and not whatever society puts on them. The next piece is Doug, who's fleeing the courts and having to go back to nature to find himself and to hide and to become free. And then we saw that amazing yellow field and sticking Paige in it, and the sun is on her face and she's talking about yellow, and it just, that was kind of serendipitous, because that wasn't originally what we had planned to do with that piece. Midsummer Night's Dream is probably one of the biggest and most popular plays. It takes place in the forest with the fairies. And then Orlando, and putting poems on trees, and these I forgot what the line is, the bark shall be my poems. I just felt was gorgeous, and I am a huge fan of Japanese maples. That was a long-winded answer, sorry.
That's great. It's great. So Bennett is asking about the Edmond Speech and the Titania Oberon exchange, introducing some negativity about nature or disturbance of nature. And Chris, you touched upon this a little bit as Shakespeare's lens through which sometimes he sees the natural order being disturbed. Can you talk a little bit more about the perception of negativity in connection to those pieces? Well,
I think it's certainly about perception. And the challenge with a Shakespeare piece is that you're dealing with a few different constructs. One, the piece was written either, in the late 1500s, early 1600s in Elizabethan England. Often the pieces are written for a different time period. So you may have a piece written in, 1600 that's set in the Roman Empire, that's performed in 2020, and then, because directors like to have creative ideas, is set in the 80s, right? Or the 70s, or so you got these four worlds that are happening. So it really is as much about perhaps what Shakespeare's intent was, but the way we as a contemporary audience hear it. And so in Midsummer Night's Dream, there's all this conversation about the world is out of whack, that winter is summer and people can't have a party, and they want their winter back because it's too hot. And to me, what that sounds like is global warming from a contemporary place. I don't know that Shakespeare necessarily was speaking to global warming. Maybe he was, but he may have been speaking on the way the human race was taking care of nature or not taking care of nature back then. So that's what I would say for that.
Thanks. Yeah, it's really interesting. Because Ned brought up the first production that we did, Macbeth, I'm having memories of the images in that play and how strong nature plays a character. And like Cheryl was saying, the the environment is very much because of who Shakespeare was in his day and how connected people were to nature, the natural world, even when living in an urban environment. The connection between nature and human behavior, action, response is so intense.
Yeah, I would just want to add to that, like the belief, the Elizabethan belief that when people in power, gods or kings and queens, if their relationship is fracturing, that the natural world parallels that and starts to fracture. And I think that's written into a lot of the plays, and definitely in Midsummer as well.
Yeah, for sure. And something to reflect on right now as we're experiencing lots of natural disaster, the drought that we're experiencing here and the fires on the West Coast, and how would Shakespeare or the actors in his company have responded to those moments, and what perhaps would he have written in response is an interesting question that I've been thinking a lot about. So a couple other questions. Ned, I'd love you to tease out a little bit. You sort of referenced the idea that the Arnold Arboretum was designed many years ago, but is still relevant today. Can you speak a little bit more perhaps to the relevance of it right now? So here and now in this moment, particularly given the last year that we've had, how do you feel that the Arboretum itself is relevant to us today?
It's a great question. It has to do with environmental justice and access to the beauty of the world. It's as simple as that. Frederick Law Olmsted, when he was turned to design the Arnold Arboretum with Harvard University and with the first director, our documents, the things that are written down that we must be free to everyone forever. We must be accessible. I think of it as sort of radical accessibility. It's the idea that we need and we have to have everyone coming here. And what's happened since the COVID crisis began, all too often, I think cities take parks or great botanical gardens and arboreta for granted. It's a nice place to go, and maybe you walk, you jog through. What happened, this is a bit of a silver lining, is I think people are rediscovering that our original mission, which was to make, if you think of the 1870s and the 1880s, Boston would have been a filthy city to live in, especially if you did not have means. If you had means, you escaped to the country. You didn't have to put up with poor sanitation. You didn't have to put up with extraordinarily bad smells coming out of festering waters. But if you couldn't afford that, the Arnold Arboretum was there for you, and there were no barriers. In fact, there isn't a single gate. There are 13 or 14 entrances. You can come in anywhere you want. And here we are with the disparity of economic justice as bad as I could have ever imagined, with so many things that make disparities between people, people of color, people who have not had simply the good luck to be born to privilege. The Arnold Arboretum now is focused, like it has always been, but even more so, in making sure that we are there for everyone. And the numbers have been astonishing. I see families on the grounds teaching their children. I see people, I hear languages of the world. I mean, one of the greatest joys for me of being at the Arnold Arboretum, and I walk it all the time, isn't the plants. That's half of it. The plants have meaning in their own right, but they do not have complete meaning without the human component. And now I would say, when you think about our design, there was no such thing as environmental justice as a term, but Olmsted wrote about it, and he designed it, and Harvard made the commitment that we would run this magnificent park forever, and everyone could come for free. And it's in our children's programs that work with Boston Public Schools. It's with our docents and our volunteers who are doubling down to give digital access to our children's programs and to make sure that the arts are supported. The thing I come back to is, if you have the right values, they should be eternal. It's a little bit like Shakespeare, right? He's not going out of style. He hasn't gotten old. There's nothing that's less profound now than what Shakespeare wrote all those years ago. Same for the Arnold Arboretum.
I'm glad that we are recording that. So we can capture that and use that soundbite for years to come. Thank you.
Can we just move into the Arnold Arboretum?
I know, if only tents were allowed. So there's one question that came up pretty early on. Maggie is asking what advice we would give to young actors and theater makers who are trying and struggling to create during this time. And Maggie, that is a question that we have been grappling with majorly. Chris, do you want to speak to that? I'm thinking especially because your home is full of theater makers, and wondering if you can speak to what you would say.
My wife, Jennifer Rohn, is a theater maker, and my daughter, Anya Edwards, is becoming a theater maker. I think there's a lot of layers to that question. I will just say, if you're a young person, you have a want, a desire, a passion, and you have a place to do it, you can all you need is one person and one audience member to do it, to create theater, I think. You don't need lighting, you don't need costume, and that's not a slight to our amazing designers, but you need a body and someone to watch you do it. And in today's world, through the virtual world, and if you have one of these little doohickeys, you can throw it onto film and go from there. Write your own stuff, read as much stuff as you want, and just start doing it. Even if it's doing it for your parents or your best friend. And I think that's in its basic essence. That's what I would say do. Be safe, social distance. If you can do it outside, all the more better. It's safer. Trust.
Doug and Paige are also teachers of theater makers. Do you want to add anything to Chris's comments?
I was going to add, theater teacher at the high school level. And I've just been finding so much, first of all, I've just been finding so much joy in connecting with my students. Again, now that school is, learning has returned in its various forms. But also, Chris saying, just do the thing, just do the thing, and keep doing the thing however you can. A lot of times, and I think Chris sort of touched on it earlier about putting, people of color on the stage or on the screen. Like, I've always felt like I had to wait for permission to do the thing, to act in a play or to to be accepted into a performance space. And actually now more than ever, you have a unique opportunity to make the space. You make your own space, and you don't have to wait for anybody's permission. You can tell the stories that you want to tell that are important to you. So I would just encourage any young theater maker thing and getting it out there somehow, because you don't have to have permission so much anymore to be invited into the club or anything. Like, you can put a video online and that's a thing, or invite people to your porch or something. But there are no more, clubs meeting anymore. There are no companies meeting right now in this conventional sense. So you don't have to wait for anybody's permission, as long as you're being safe and wearing a mask when you need to, and all of that. Do the thing. You don't need permission.
Thanks, Paige. We are just about at time for this evening, so I'm going to pause us here. You are welcome to reach out with further questions. Anyone who's still watching, or if you watch the recording and there's a question that comes up, please reach out to us. Cheryl put an email in the chat with information on how to get information on the Arboretum, and you can reach out to info@actorshakespeareproject.org if you would like to get more information about the acting side of things. So that is us for this evening. I just want to say thank you so much to Ned and Cheryl and Chris for hosting, and to Doug and Paige for joining us and answering some questions here at the end, and for being a part of our wonderful production that we created together. If you are feeling generous, please consider donating to one or both of our organizations and help us to sustain our free programming through COVID-19. Thanks, everybody, and we hope to see you back in 2 weeks' time for part 2.